There's a vivid, visceral moment in life that can be found in the first time you notice the pull to act differently than you felt inside, just to fit in. Most of us can find that if we sit still long enough. Not the push of becoming more, the pull of becoming less. Shrinking, adjusting, editing, becoming the version of ourselves the room had space for. For most of us, that moment lives somewhere between the ages of 12 and 25. And if you're a parent, you may be watching that moment happen to your child right now. You're sitting across from their teacher. The meeting was scheduled for 15 minutes. It's been 12. And in those 12 minutes, you've heard 3 things about your daughter that feel strangely familiar. She dominates the discussion. She can be a little dramatic when she doesn't get her way. And the other children don't always get a chance when she's in the room. You nod, quickly say thank you, and hurry out. Walking out the door of that school, something surfaces that has nothing to do with your daughter. It has everything to do with you. You've actually heard that about yourself at that age. In a room just like that one. Too bossy and doesn't let others get a chance. Yep. And then you spend the next 20 or so years waiting for permission to take up space. And because it happened to you, without you realizing it, you almost missed seeing it happening to her. This doesn't take place all at once. It's a slow process. The hand that used to shoot up first doesn't anymore. There's a pause now, a check. Who else is going to speak before I do? The project that needed her leadership, she stepped back from it. Not because she couldn't do it, but because the room felt safer when someone else went first. The opinion stayed silent. The reaction lands softer than it actually is. Manageable. That's what she's becoming. You know that word. You should because you learned it early. And one day you look at her across the dinner table and something is quieter than it used to be. You know that quiet because you've lived inside it for a very long time. And now for the first time you can see exactly how it happened. Leadership starts within. It starts with you. Always. My name is Lolita Devi Singh. Welcome back to Finding Y.E.S, your empowered success. We're in Chapter 3, Living My Story on Autopilot. As you can remember in Chapter 1, the story I didn't know I was living, we named the pattern, the reaction under pressure that surprises you, the one that doesn't match who you want yourself to be. And we asked the question that lives at the center of that episode, have I been here before? In Chapter 2, learning the story of me, we went back to find the answer. We walked through my lifespan lens together, end to end, and we went deep into the earliest years in utero through 12 years old, when your operating system was written before awareness, language, and most importantly, before you had any say in what you were absorbing. Today in Chapter 3, Living My Story on Autopilot, the lens moves forward to 12 through 25, what I call social shaping, the years where everything we just witnessed in that school, the comment, the quiet, the slow making of a smaller self may have happened to you too. Today I'm sharing with you 3 things. The lived experience of what happened in those years and where it's still showing up today. Then the science underneath what was actually happening that nobody explained at the time. And lastly, one practice that begins the work of recovering what got quieter. Between 12 and 25, the need to belong was not a preference. It was a drive, as biological as hunger. What you adapted to in order to fit in felt like choice. It wasn't. It was social survival. And what you changed to survive socially became the first draft of a story you thought you were writing freely. Here's what that survival looked like from the inside of lived experience. You felt everything. Before anyone spoke, you already knew the temperature of the room, feeling the shift in someone's mood before their face changed, sensing something was wrong before a single word confirmed it. You didn't have a name for it then. You just knew that you felt things deeply, completely, in a way that others around you didn't seem to. And for a while you thought that was normal, until the group told you otherwise. The girl who felt everything in a world that had no word for what you were. You got called sensitive, like it was a flaw. You read the room, every face, every shift in energy. No, you weren't weak. You were wired to feel it all. And you learned in those years to hide what you felt, because the thing that made you most yourself was the thing the group had the least space for. And then one day, without explanation, you were excluded. No confrontation, no reason given, no conversation that would have at least given you something to hold on to. Just not invited, not included, not in. And the silence of that at 12, at 15, at 17 was its own specific devastation, because you couldn't point to what you had done wrong, couldn't fix what hadn't been named. You could only conclude in a way that adolescents conclude things completely and without mercy, that the problem was you. Too much and not enough, somehow two things being true at the same time. So you started editing, pulling back the feelings before it reached your face, laughing at things that didn't land as funny, going along with what the group decided, even when every part of you knew it wasn't right, because the alternative, being on the outside of that circle, felt like something you could not survive. And so the most alive part of you went underground, the part that felt everything, noticed everything, cared genuinely and deeply about the people around you. That part didn't disappear. You learned to wait. You're still waiting. And here's what was actually happening beneath all of it, not just in the group, but everywhere. At home, the conditioning that had been building since before you had language for it, well, it was still running. What love required, what safety looked like, what version of you the family needed you to be. That current was already underneath everything, and now the world outside the front door had its own version of the same demand. Fit in, belong, don't cost too much. Society added its layer too. Be likable, be agreeable, smart enough to be taken seriously, but not in a way that made the room uncomfortable. Opinions were fine as long as they landed soft. Confidence was welcome as long as it read as approachable. Take up space, just not too much of it. And the family layered theirs on top, of course. Make us proud, don't embarrass us, be the version of you that fits the story we are telling about who we are. 4 currents running simultaneously through a nervous system already wired from those earliest years to read the environment and adapt. Not one of them asking what you actually wanted. Not one of them leaving room for questions. So you didn't ask. The silence wasn't passive. It wasn't a self that had nothing worth knowing. It was every signal around you, biological, social, familial, cultural, pointing in the same direction. Belong at any cost, and you did it. And the cost, the real cost, was the version of you that never got to find out what she thought, what she wanted, who she was when nobody was watching and nothing was required. That version went quiet because you didn't yet have what you have now, the lens that shows you it is a choice. Here's the science beneath that lived experience. The group, the exclusion, the 4 currents running simultaneously, family, peers, society, conditioning, and not one of them leaving room for the question of what you actually wanted. Now let me show you what was happening inside you while all of that was running, because what you lived in between 12 and 25 was a program, already written, already running. Dr. Carolyn Leaf, clinical and research neuroscientist with over 40 years of research, and Dr. Bruce Lipton, stem cell biologist, both confirm what the broader neuroscience field has established. The conscious mind, the part of you that thinks deliberately, that questions, that chooses, operates at most 5% of the time. The non-conscious mind, the part running your patterns, your habits, your automatic responses, operating the other, 95%. 95% never fails to amaze me. And the programs loaded into that non-conscious mind, where were they written? Think about that. Well, the answer lies in the years we covered in chapter 2, in utero through 12, before awareness, language, before you had any say. So by the time you were 12, the program was already running. The belonging drive, the adaptive strategies, the reading of rooms, all of it already there, already executing. And then adolescence arrived and the volume turned up. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for independent judgment, long-term thinking, the capacity to pause and ask, wait, is this actually what I want? Is not fully developed until your mid-20s. Not 18, not 21, mid-20s, which means that between 12 and 25, the very part of you that would need to be fully online in order to question the program was still being built, the non-conscious running at 95% and the 5% not yet equipped to interrupt it. Just freaking unbelievable. It would have been great to understand this when I was raising my children, but the gift is, today I speak to my daughters about the importance of understanding child development every chance I get, much to their annoyance at times, I'm sure. Back to the science. We established in Chapter 2 that social rejection registers in the brain with the same intensity as physical pain, that the need to belong, as Baumeister and Leary confirmed, is not a preference, it is a fundamental human drive as biological as hunger. What Chapter 2 showed you in the context of inheritance and early conditioning, Chapter 3 shows you running at full volume, in the group, in the hallway, in every room where the question of belonging was being answered without your conscious participation. And Erik Erikson, who mapped the developmental tasks of a human life with precision, named this stage identity versus role confusion. So the core task of adolescence is figuring out who you are. And he found that this task happens almost entirely in relationship to others. You discover who you are by watching how the room responds to different versions of you. The room was the mirror. And the more you studied it across those years, across every room, the more it shaped what you brought back. By mid-adolescence, research confirms that you've already lived parental influence lessens and peer influence grows. The approval, the reactions, the belonging, signals of the people around you carry more weight than anything happening at home. The social brain is loudest precisely when the prefrontal cortex is least equipped to question it. The importance of understanding this as a parent is life-changing, both for you and the next generation. And the seeing through this lens creates the opportunity to break negative generational cycles. So here we are, 4 currents running simultaneously through a nervous system already wired for adaptation, with 95% of the processing happening below the threshold of conscious choice. Early conditioning already running beneath everything, absorbed before awareness. Peer influence at peak activation, louder than anything else. Societal expectations pressing in. Be likable, be agreeable, take up the right amount of space. And the family adding its own. Be the version of you that fits the story we're telling. Not one of them requiring your conscious permission. This information is so powerful. Take a moment to absorb this. You were not the problem. You were the reaction, not yet the response. And this, once seen, you can never unsee, which is exactly where we're going. The science gives you the knowledge, the evidence, the confirmation that what you lived had a precise explanation beneath it. And my lifespan lens, which you now carry, gives you something the science alone cannot: a vantage point. The ability to see yourself on a continuum, from the beginning, from the outside of the story, for the very first time. If my lifespan lens is new to you, Chapter 2 is where it begins. Go there first. Everything that follows will land differently when you do, because you cannot change what you cannot see. What I call the audit pause gives you the first honest look. And if you heard that a few moments ago, that you were never the problem, that you were the reaction and not yet the response, this is where that begins to change. Not all at once, not dramatically, but here in this moment with this lens, for the first time you can see. Now, the practice. I call it the audit pause. 2 parts. The first, stop. The second, see. That's it. Not fixing, not changing everything at once. Just stopping long enough to see clearly where the version of you that learned to fit in is still running today, because she is still running. Not in the hallway of a school, not in the friend group of a 15-year-old. In your career, in your relationships, in the way you parent your child, and the way you still parent yourself. The audit pause brings the lens to your current life. And what the lens reveals for the first time is exactly where you are on the arc. Now to the stop. It is the interruption. In a moment this week, a meeting, a conversation, a quiet minute alone, when you feel the familiar pull, the edit happening before you speak, the instinct to shrink before you enter the room, the version of yourself already being prepared because it is the version that fits, stop. One breath. That's all. One breath that creates the distance between what was formed and what you're about to do with it. The non-conscious mind runs at 95%. The 5%, your conscious mind, now equipped with the lens, steps in. That is the stop. The second part is the see. Using the lens you now have, both from the inside, from having lived it, and from the knowledge the science brings. Look honestly across 3 domains of your current life. In your career, where is the version of you that learned to fit in, still editing before she speaks? Still softening her read of the room, still waiting in spaces she has already earned the right to occupy, for permission to take up the space that's already hers. In your relationships, where is she still managing how much of herself she brings forward? Still reading the temperature before speaking her truth, still making herself manageable for rooms that deserve the full version. And in your parenting, where's the version of you that learned to fit in, still running, not just in how you move through the world, but in how you're raising the next generation to move through it? Are you parenting your child from the wound or from the wisdom? And underneath all 3, one more question. Where are you still parenting yourself from that place? Still telling the part of you that feels everything, that reads every room, that cares deeply, that leads without being asked, that she is too much. See it. That's practice. Not to judge, not to fix it today, to see it clearly, honestly with the lens you now have for the first time. Let me show you what this looks like. You're walking out of the door of that school, the 3 comments still in the air. She dominates, she's dramatic, she doesn't let others get a chance. And you feel the old pull beginning, the familiar program starting to run, the part of you that heard those same words at that age, in a room like that one, already moving towards a response it has always given. Talk to her, manage it, help her fit. Stop. One breath. See, you know this territory from the inside. You lived it. And you know it now from the lens. Your daughter's not at the beginning of a problem. She's at a stage on the arc, 12, 13, 14, where the belonging drive is at its most powerful, where the social brain is loudest, where the prefrontal cortex is still forming. You know what that comment repeated enough times will do? Because it did it to you. And you know something else. The thing you're calling too much, the voice that fills the room, the feelings that run deep, the leadership that arrives before it is asked for, that is not something to be managed. It is something to be named, seen, given a lens. And you are the one person in her life who has that lens now. Not from a textbook or a research paper, from having lived it and from the knowledge that living, anchored in science, has given you. Both kinds of knowing at the same time, that is what you bring to her now. And this right here is where the generational story begins to turn. Not in a dramatic moment, not in a single conversation, in the ordinary moments. The walk home from school, the dinner table, the quiet after the hard day, where you choose, because you can now see to be the one person in our life who names it differently. Who says what they called too much, that is your greatest gift. Who says the version of you that feels everything, that reads every room, that cares so deeply it sometimes hurts, do not let her go quiet. I know her. We need her. I almost lost her, and I'm not going to let that happen to you. What changes in you ripples forward to her. What you can see, she no longer has to discover alone. What you choose to name differently, she gets to carry differently. That is the ripple. That is the intergenerational thread this work exists to pull. Leadership starts within. It starts with you, always. And now, before we move forward, let's stay here for just a moment. You came into this episode carrying something you may have been carrying since you were 12 years old. The quiet conclusion that the version of you who learned to fit in, who softened the opinion, who pulled back the feelings, who made herself manageable, was simply who you are. Today, you know differently. The belonging drive that ran through those years was not a preference. It was an urgent biological imperative, running through a nervous system already shaped by everything that came before it, and through a brain that did not yet have the architecture to question it. You were not making free choices. You were running a program, and the program written before you had any say in it followed you out of that hallway and into every room you have ever entered in since, into the career, into the relationships, into the parenting, and into the quiet moments, alone, when even there, the filter is still on. Crazy. You felt the cost of that today in the sea, in the 3 domains, in the honest look at where the version of you that learned to fit in is still running. And now you have the lens to see it, which means for the first time, you have something you have never had before, the beginning of a conscious choice. The reaction was never the end of the story. The response has always been waiting. And now with this lens, you can begin to find it. In our next episode, we go one layer deeper into the autopilot, because what happened to those adaptations after 25 is something very few talk about. They didn't stay as adjustments. They didn't remain as survival strategies. They hardened. They repeated. And what repeats long enough without being examined, it stops feeling like a pattern. It starts feeling like personality. And personality, once it feels fixed, stops being questioned and becomes, get ready, this is just who I am. Because what you call personality might just be your longest habit ever. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Something landed today. I know it did. Not because of what I said, but because of what you recognize. That recognition that this is me, this happened, it's still running, it's not a small thing. It is the beginning of the seeing. And the seeing, once it starts, does not stop. This week, one practice. The audit pause. One moment, one breath, one honest look. Find the place in your current life where the version of you that learned to fit in is still running. Stop and see. That is enough for now. You don't need to fix it today. You just need to see it. And if you're a parent, look at your child, the daughter across the table, the child who feels everything, the one they're already calling too much. You have something now that nobody gave you at her age. Give it to her. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear that the version of her or him that learned to fit in was never the full version. The full version is still there. She's never left. And subscribe, because the story doesn't stop here. Chapter 3, Episode 2 takes us somewhere every one of us has lived, and most of us have never fully understood. My name is Lolita Devi Singh. Leadership starts within. It starts with you, always. Until next time, say yes to leading better, living better, and loving better.